Hey everyone, we are going to be upgrading the 2 Phyrexia All-Will-Be-One Precons, the Corrupting Influence, and Rebellion Rising. I'm Jeremy Knoll.
I'm John Suarez.
And so first off, why don't you just tell them what you just told me?
Rebellion Rising?
Yeah.
So I play Flesh and Blood.
Yeah.
The hero I play is Phi Rising Rebellion. Great minds or imitation flattery? Who knows where it came from? But
just a fun, interesting coincidence.
I thought that was funny.
We're going to just go over both decks, and we are going to try and go through a couple new cards, a couple cards to add, and a couple cards to take out. And by no means is this definitive, but it should give you a good direction to go in. The first deck is Corrupting Influence. This is a white, black, green deck, and this one's based around the Toxic mechanic.
Which I love.
Yeah.
Big fan of Poison in general.
Were you playing when Poison originally came out?
I was not playing when Poison was originally a thing back in Legends and Mirage and Visions, but by the time I was heavily played in competitive Magic, it had come back around in Time Spiral. Okay. And it was only on basically one card, a Sliver.
Yeah.
And
was it Toxic?
It was Poisonous
Sliver.
Mm-hmm. And it was very good.
Yeah.
Very, very good. It was good and block constructed. The Sliver Boys.
The Sliver Kids.
Yeah,
won the Pro Tour.
Won the Pro Tour. Yeah. With the, that was limited. That was Two-Headed Giant Time Spiral draft.
Yep.
And they realized that just taking all the slivers worked.
Yep.
And part of that was Poisonous Sliver.
Yeah, the Poison Sliver. Yeah. And then, it came back around as Infect in Scars of Mirrodin, which was... That was around when I was playing like a little bit more competitively. It was kind of winding down right before I actually started here at Star City Games a little bit, and that was a lot of fun. Yeah,
that deck took off in Modern and then in Legacy even. So.
Yeah, I remember playing the pre-release and getting like Corrupted Conscious and the Hydra and all of it. Consecrated Sphinx all in my pool. And but Toxic is the new version of that, and this is a little bit different in that it is not like Infect because it doesn't put -1/-1 counters on the creatures and stuff like that.
And they also will deal normal damage.
Wither, they'll deal the normal damage, which is a big thing for it. So whenever the creature deals combat damage to a player, they also get a number of poison counters equal to the Toxic. Yep. And Toxic does stack.
Yes.
So if you have a creature that has Toxic 1 and it gains an additional Toxic 1, they get 2 poison counters. Yep. So this one's headed up by Ixhel, Scion of Atraxa. Atraxa's back. Thumbs up or thumbs down, depending on how you look at it. And it's a 1 white, black, green Phyrexian Angel 2/5 with Flying Vigilance and Toxic 2. And it has the new Corrupted mechanic, or keyword rather. And it says at the beginning of your end step, each opponent who has 3 or more poison counters exiles the top card of their library face down. You can look at it, play those cards for as long as they remain exiled, and you may spend mana as though it were mana of any color to cast those spells. So Corrupted is generally if an opponent has 3 or more poison counters, you get to do something extra. And this one is really nice because you just get to start stealing cards, which is one of my favorite things to do.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of stealing cards as much, but I'm a very big fan of Poison, and I like that Corrupted is encouraging to give multiple people counters.
Yeah,
like you want to, because
you don't want to just
hone in on somebody, and obviously Poison, Infect, Toxic will obviously have a stigma at a table where people are worried about that being
It's generally, and that's something that we kind of talked a little bit before this about is when Commander really started to take off, and since then, it's really come about multiple times of, do we change the amount of poison counters a person needs to be knocked out of a Commander game?
No.
I don't think so. It is difficult enough to actually knock multiple people out with 10 poison counters that probably not worth it at this time, but we'll see what the RC says after these new Toxic cards come around and see how that works. The other card is
Vishgrass, the Doom Hive. This is 2 colors, white, black, green. It's a 3/3 with Menace and Toxic 1. It is a Phyrexian insect. So we have a Phyrexian Angel, Phyrexian insect. And whenever it enters the battlefield, you create 3 colorless Phyrexian Might artifact creature tokens with Toxic 1, and this creature can't block. And then this card gets +1/+1 for each poison counter your opponents have.
That's really cool.
This card is very good.
That card's super sweet.
I will probably, when I open this and play it, swap those 2 real fast.
Just immediately put this one in the
sure.
driver's seat.
Getting 4 creatures immediately when it enters the battlefield with poison or toxic, that's where I want to be.
Yeah, that one's really cool. And then just gets bigger.
Yes.
And it has menace, so it's just going to be obnoxious.
Mhm.
It does only do the one toxic unless you can give it, more toxic.
Sure.
But still, you're going to have a big menace beater that's just going to deal incremental poison damage.
Yep.
All right, so going over a couple new cards, there are 24 new cards
It's an obnoxious amount.
in this Corrupting Influence deck. So most decks have come out and they've had like 10 new cards in them up until a little while ago. And then you had like the Warhammer 40,000 decks, which were basically almost entirely new cards. But this one has 24 new cards. We're only going to go over a few new cards, ones that we think will be either really good out of the deck and to put into other decks or really highlight what's going on in there. So the first one is Norns Decree. This is an enchantment for 2 and a white. Whenever one or more creatures an opponent control deals combat damage to you, that opponent gets a poison counter. And whenever a player attacks, if one or more players being attacked are poisoned, the attacking player draws a card.
Yeah, you thought the Ghostly Prison was a deterrent.
This is obnoxious.
Come on.
This is so good.
Yeah, it is. This card is awesome.
This is going to be, Ghostly Prison, propaganda style, like don't touch me sphere of safeties are nice because, you just have to pay mana. This really makes them think. Because
yes, it does.
A, they're going to get a poison counter, and B, if, they're poisoned, they get to draw a card, you know? So
exactly.
It's kind of like hey, go over there too.
Plus it has the sweet art with our corrupted Planeswalkers.
Oh, yeah. This one's got some sweet art.
The next card we're going to highlight is Phyrexia Outbreak. 2 colors and a black sorcery. Each opponent gets a poison counter.
Mm-hmm.
Great. Just on that rate alone, it's probably worth playing. Then each creature your opponent controls gets -1/-1 until end of turn for each poison counter its controller has.
That's
another card that's great to spread the poison around so that you can kind of mutilate the board.
Yeah. It's not going to be quite a mutilate or a toxic deluge in any sense, but it's definitely going to get rid of a lot of the smaller problematic creatures. And like you said, just give a poison counter to everybody.
If I was playing a poison deck, which I am, I would play this on rate 3, give everybody a poison counter.
Yep.
Just flat out.
It's really good. And our last one is a new artifact, Glistening Sphere, which I think is really cool. It's 3 mana. It does enter the battlefield tapped, but when it enters the battlefield, proliferate. I think this is going to be great in, obviously, the poison deck.
Yes.
And any sort of blue-green, proliferate shenanigans that you ever want to play. And then it taps to add 1 mana of any color. And it also has the corrupted keyword of tap to add 3 mana of any one color. Activate only if an opponent has 3 or more poison counters, which you're probably going to get pretty easily with this deck.
Yes.
So that one's obnoxious. That one's really
it's awesome that it's very clearly a poison card that will also just get played in other decks. Proliferating your planeswalkers, proliferating
like you're probably not going to get that last add 3 mana, but enters the battlefield, proliferates, add 1 of any color. Probably going to go in any sort of proliferate or planeswalker super friend style deck, I think.
Yep. So. Any deck with counters.
Yeah, for sure.
Yep. All right. So cards to add. We have a few that we're going to cover here.
Mm-hmm.
This card, when this card got spoiled, I was very, very excited. And that's the little Skrelv Defector Might. It's a 1/1 for 1 white legendary artifact creature, Frixian Might. It has Toxic 1. It cannot block, and it has a Phyrexian White tap. Choose a color, another target creature you control gains Toxic 1 and Hexproof from that color until the end of turn, and it can't be blocked by creatures of that color this turn. So it's not quite Mother of Runes or Giver of Runes protection, but it's Hexproof, and you can't block it, but it also gives it Toxic.
Yeah.
This card's awesome.
This card's really... As soon as I saw this, the first thing I thought is, Stephen Green is going to play this as a commander just to get us. It's going to be like, first turn. Attack you.
We'll find out soon. Who's doing what with that card?
Our next one is one that we talked about a little bit, and it's really good. It's an enchantment. Really Skrels Hive. It's an enchantment for 1 and a white. At the beginning of your upkeep, you lose 1 life and create a 1/1 colorless Phyrexian Might artifact creature token with Toxic 1, and this creature can't block. Pretty good so far.
Yep.
Kind of compares to Bitter Blossom a little bit, except it's got the Toxic instead of flying. But it also has Corrupted. As long as an opponent has 3 or more poison counters, creatures you control with Toxic have lifelink as well.
Yeah, this card's obnoxious.
This card is so good.
This card is very, very good. You hit this on turn 2?
Yeah.
It just sits there? Good luck.
It's just going to build and build and build. Can you imagine if this was like in standard back in the day? It would be obnoxious. It's so good.
Yes. The next card we have is kind of a callback to the Mirror and Besieged Scars of Mirror era, and it's White Sun's Twilight. X white sorcery. You gain X life. Create X 1/1 colorless Frixian Might artifact creature tokens with toxic 1 and can't block. And if X is 5 or more, destroy all other creatures.
This one's fantastic, and I think it's like you said, it kind of harkens back to because you had the all the Sun's Zenith cards in back then. Now we have all the Twilight versions of them, and on their face they seem like, okay, this is pretty good, but as soon as you get to the if X is 5 or more for all of them, it's like, oh, okay, this is going to be obnoxious.
This card will probably quickly replace Martial Coup in a lot of decks.
I believe so. Yeah, like you're gaining life in addition to everything, and then you've got all the creatures that are going to have toxic, and then same thing with Martial Coup right there. So I think this will be an easy slot in for that. Our next one is a Johnny Sleeper Agent, which is the only one that it is Phyrexianized, but it's not
it's completed.
Yeah, completed. It's completed, and it's not specifically about poison or infect. It is 1 green white hybrid white, and it is completed, so it can be that green white hybrid with the Phyrexian mana can be that or 2 life. If you pay the 2 life, it comes in with 2 fewer loyalty counters. Yep. So there's a whole bunch of these now in the new set. But this one specifically comes in with 4 loyalty counters normally. +1, reveal the top card of your library. If it's a creature or planeswalker, put it into your hand. Otherwise, they can put it in the bottom of your library. -3 is really what we're looking at here.
Yes.
Distribute 3 +1/+1 counters up to 3 target creatures. They gain vigilance until end of turn. Putting that extra boost on any of your small mites is going to be really good and get them to be really annoying really quick. And then -6, you get an emblem with whenever you cast a creature or planeswalker spell, target opponent gets 2 poison counters.
So you're not going to block a lot because there's mites, but the rest of the creatures in your deck block, and this card could get to 6 counters reasonably quickly.
Yeah.
Playing it for 4, and putting it immediately to 5 loyalty. You have a card that proliferates. You probably have multiple cards that proliferate with like Evolution Sage.
I'm just thinking more of the -3 more than anything. So like the -6, just like most ultimates,
you never get to them.
Yeah,
normally
most ultimates I just don't even. They're mostly a blank.
Yep,
for me.
I think this one is achievable, especially because you're going to have multiple ways to do proliferating in this deck multiple times.
Sure.
So, and the last card we have is the sneakiest card and probably one of my favorite Commander cards. And least favorite Commander cards for most people, and that's Tainted Strike. 1 black instant. Target creature gets +1/+0 and gains infect till end of turn. This card's great because it just lets your opponents kill each other. You rarely have to use it on your own.
Yeah.
Card. Just, somebody's getting attacked for 10, 12. Casual dragon comes across the board. You just, now your dragon has infect.
Oh, are you going to take 12?
Rude.
You're going to take 13 poison, sorry.
Yeah, and even if you don't kill somebody with it, you can easily give them the 3 poison counter to trigger all your corrupted cards.
Yeah, so. There's a good chance that they've already built up a little bit, so you don't even have to wait until that one really big 10 power creature swings. It can just be like a 4 power flyer.
Yep.
And if you've built those up, you're just like, oh, well, you had 5, well, now you're at 10. Sorry, you're out of the gate. It is definitely an obnoxious card because it comes out of nowhere.
Yeah.
So we're going to talk about a couple of cards you should probably remove from the deck. The first one is Mirror Convert. It's a 2/2 for a 2/1 artifact creature Phyrexian Mirror. It has Toxic 1 and it has tap, pay 2 life, add 1 mana of any color. It's it's just okay. Like
I don't want to just be paying life.
Yeah, it has Toxic 1 on a 2/1 body. They're probably just going to block it pretty quickly.
Yep.
And paying 2 life to add 1 mana of any color on an artifact creatures.
I'm not in for it.
Yeah, it's
I'm out. There's plenty of better 2 mana rocks that you can play.
Yeah.
Obviously Toxic 1's nice, but
I think this is probably going to be like an okay one if you're building the mirror deck, which seems to be like getting popular. It'll be pretty okay for that.
Yep.
Our next one.
Our next card is as a card I mentioned to you. I think could have probably been printed in Legends because it's just not very good. It's Carrie Paul. 3 colors and a green. It's an instant at least, and it puts 2 green 1/1 insect creatures tokens in the battlefield with infect.
Yeah.
The cards from back then are bad.
In Legends, this would have been a sorcery and possibly cost more.
Yes, agreed. If this was a sorcery, this card could have went straight into Legends. No doubt in my mind. As an instant, yes, it's probably too powerful for that set. So,
but yeah, Carrion Call originally also from Scars block, and these they have infect rather than toxic, but it's
it's on theme.
Yeah,
but they're better cards to replace it with.
Exactly. The next one is Phyrexian Rebirth, which is the destroy all creatures with the Wrath for 4 white, and then you create an XX colorless horror artifact creature token where X is the number of creatures destroyed this way. It's like okay if you're having to like break glass in case of emergency type thing, and you're probably going to be able to get a few, like a pretty decently sized creature because you're going to have a bunch of mites on the battlefield more than likely. But for the most part, you've got like some better options, especially with like White Sun Zenith in there and stuff like that. So it's in a lot of white precons, and it can come out pretty easily for this one for better wraths.
Yep. And the last card we cut, which I know people are going to be upset about because it's a cool card.
Yeah.
It's cool. It's Wormquake. 4 colors, green, sorcery. It has Corrupted. You create an XX green Phyrexian Worm token with Trample and Toxic 1, where X is the amount of mana spent to cast this spell. Then for each opponent with 3 or more poison counters on it, you create another one of these tokens. So, on its face, hopefully, you're creating 2 6/6s with Toxic 1.
Yeah.
And then it has Flashback for 10. 10 is a lot.
Yeah, 10 is a lot.
10 needs to be like game ending.
Yeah.
And maybe this could be game ending because you spade in 10, so you're making 10/10s.
Yeah.
And hopefully that at that point, multiple people have
just buy your Card Crossroads.
There's just a million things you can do to...
There's a lot.
Yeah, I don't think this is good enough.
Yeah, by the time you're getting to 10 mana, I mean, you're probably going to be able to do a little bit earlier in a green deck, but by the time you're getting to 10 mana, you're probably only going to have a couple other, like maybe 2 or 1 other opponent. So... yeah, it's like, okay. And like you said, I think this is going to be like one of those that'll be really fun. Mm-hmm. It'll be a very big Timmy kind of card, but it's going to be, for the most part, you can take it out to make it the whole deck a little bit better. All right, so we are going to be moving on to the Rebellion Rising deck. And this is the deck...
Rising Rebellion.
Yeah, Rebellion Rising.
Phi Rising Rebellion. I've been playing it for months.
Rebellion Rising. That does get a little annoying, but they're so true. So this one is the red-white deck that is focused a little bit more on tokens and attacking, like you usually are in a red-white deck, and a very minor equipment theme. Mm-hmm. That's usually pretty face-forward on a lot of the red-white kind of decks. So this is headed up by Niali Sun's Vanguard, 2 red-white, 3/3, attacking. It's a legendary creature, Human Rebel, which is kind of important. Attacking tokens you control have double strike. Whenever one or more tokens you control attack a player, exile the top card of your library. During any turn you attacked with a token, you may play that card. Mm-hmm. We kind of went back and forth on this one a little bit because the official rule for this card is not out at the time of filming. But we talked to a judge and kind of looked at it and back and forth. And we're pretty sure that the way that this is worded, whenever one or more tokens you control attack a player, that means that it can trigger multiple times in one combat step. Yeah. So if you're
pretty confident about that.
If you're attacking each player with 1 token, you get to exile the top 3 cards of your library. And it's also kind of neat because it doesn't have the same restriction like a bunch of other of this style, especially in red, do, where it's you can play that until your end of turn or until the end of your next turn. Yep. This is just as long as you've attacked with a token and this card is out.
Yep.
So you can exile 2 or 3 like early on in the game, and then 3 turns later, you can cast those cards as long as Niali's out still. So, pretty cool. Our second card?
Yeah, so our second card is Athari, Sun's Glory, 3 colors, red, white. It's a legendary creature, Phoenix. We got another Phoenix commander.
Yep.
Important to note. It's a 3/3 with flying, lifelink, and haste. Whenever it attacks, you get an experience counter. So experience counters are back.
Yep.
And then you create a 2/2 red rebel creature token that's tapped and attacking for each experience counter you have.
And then the last bit.
And then it has more text. Because it needs more text.
Because it was a Magic the Gathering card that was
wasn't
printed
good enough with that.
Printed after 2015. So
2 colors, red, white, tap an untapped rebel you control and return it from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped. Because it's a Phoenix, it has to come back.
And it does have to come back. And it also has the tap an untapped rebel.
Yes.
Niali is a rebel as well.
So. This card is... I think that card's very good. That's one of the better Phoenixes we've seen.
Yeah, I think it's really good. Like, a lot of the Phoenixes are just kind of, okay, this is fine. You know,
they're Phoenixes.
If you're going to, it's going to go in the graveyard. You can bring it back later for some random thing. But a 3/3 flying lifelink haste for 5 that can get more attacking creatures is really good.
It is. The experience counters cards have been getting better and better whenever they come up.
Mm-hmm.
It started off really strong and kind of got a little bit worse.
Yeah,
but then
you had like Azuri and...
You had Azuri, you had Marin of Meltoth.
Yeah, Parnell Toth.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And then we got some in CLB, I think, too, that were pretty good.
Yeah. But yeah, the experience counters are doing really well. So this deck didn't have as many new cards. It had about the average amount of new cards, which is 10 between this and the new cards in the deck and
That's
also
interesting.
the set. What's that?
That there was only 10 new cards in this deck, but 24 in the other.
Yeah.
That is very interesting.
Yeah. I think they just really wanted to put the toxic stuff.
Yeah, no, I mean, that makes sense, but that is still intriguing.
Yeah.
I wonder what the decision-making behind that was, other than we want to push the sets mechanic.
Yeah.
Which makes sense.
Yeah, and this one's got a lot of cards that are just kind of red-white staple reprints, you know.
Yep.
The first one is one that I think is going to see play outside of this deck quite a bit. Clever Concealment, and that is 2 white instant Convoke, and it says any number of target non-land permanents you control phase out.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a Teferi's Protection. I know that that's like the immediate thing that wants to jump to mind.
The things I think of are like all of the pick one of the 3 mana, all your creatures get indestructible kind of effects.
Yeah,
Same idea.
Yeah, sort of like that. So you're phasing them out so they don't die to X, Y, or Z.
Mm-hmm.
And it's all non-land permanents.
Which is nice.
So you don't have like all your permanents phase out like Teferi's Protection. You don't have all the things. But this can also be free.
Mm-hmm.
If you have the 4 creatures.
2, right? Or, yeah, you need 4, I guess.
Because you need 4, 2 of which are white.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
So as long as you've got that and you're playing a tokens deck, so there's a good chance that you're going to have that on board and somebody wraths or does something, just pay 4 or pay, tap 4, pay 0, here it goes.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting. I think that card, Flawless Maneuver, obviously.
Flawless Maneuver, stuff like that, yeah.
Very cool.
So I think that one's cool.
Next card we have is an enchantment. It is Roar of Resistance. Colorless and a red. Creature tokens you control have haste. And whenever one or more creatures attack, not creatures you control, creatures attack, you may pay a colorless and a red. If you do, creatures attacking your opponents and or planeswalkers they control get +2/+0.
I like this card a lot.
I think this card is actually very, very good. The ability to give your tokens haste is very good on its face. The ability to have a political enchantment on top of that is awesome.
Yeah, I compared it to Duelist Heritage, which I really like as a card because it's one where it's not your creatures you're attacking. It's just as during combat, whenever a creature attacks, you get to say, okay, I want to give that double strike. And this one is if you've got you keep land drawing or something like land go or something like that, and you've just got some lands left over, you can be very political and just, hey, if you don't attack me. Attack them, I'm going to give it +2. They're a threat. I'm going to give all your creatures +2. And it's it seems really cool.
They also correctly put planeswalkers on it, which is important.
Yes, that is a big thing. Planeswalkers, especially with a lot of the Super Friends, they put a bunch of planeswalkers and all will be one. So lots to go there. The next one I think is going to be really good in just about any white deck. This has the phrase "draw a card" on it on a white card, and doesn't it has a stipulation like most do, but it's very achievable. So it's Staff of the Storyteller. It's 1 and a white artifact. Whenever it enters the battlefield, create a 1/1 white spirit creature token with flying. Whenever you create 1 or more creature tokens, put a story counter on it, and you can pay 1 and tap it to remove a story counter and draw a card. Pretty simple. If you're playing any sort of white-based token deck, this is just going to gain a bunch. You can proliferate on it pretty easily, and do a bunch of stuff. And you can just tap, draw a card, tap, draw a card. If you're playing mono white,
paying a white and tapping it to draw a card is going to be fair. This card's going to be pretty popular. Yeah, I'm confident in saying that.
It's not absurdly broken.
No, it's not Smothering Tide.
It's not Smothering Tide, but it's still very good for what it does.
They're continuing to push white to being a very good color, and I think we're at that point now. I think white is one of the most powerful colors you could be playing, Commander.
It's very much so. There's a lot going on with it. All right, so we're going to talk about a couple of cards that we would suggest adding to the deck.
So the first card we have is Geist Honored Monk. 3 colors, white is a human monk, has vigilance. Its power and toughness are equal to the number of creatures you control, and then whenever it enters the battlefield, you get 2 white spirit tokens with flying.
Yeah.
I could tell you did this one.
Yeah.
I would have chose Cloudgoat Ranger.
Cloudgoat Ranger was
Geist Honored Monk's a better card. Not going to argue.
I like both. Cloudgoat Ranger was when I came back into Magic and started playing tournament Magic.
Sure.
And that was like Lorwyn. Yeah. I started playing that. That one was near and dear to my heart. And then Innistrad is when right around when I actually got my job at Star City Games and was playing that a lot. And Geist Honored Monk was one of my favorites.
Monk is better, but
for early Commander too. Even so. Our next one is Crenco, Tin Streak Kingpin. It's a 1/2 for 2 and a red, legendary creature goblin. Whenever it attacks, put a +1/+1 counter on it, and then create a number of 1/1 red goblin creature tokens equal to Crenco's power. Pretty easy to abuse if you've got something that can actually give it more counters, and it gets really big really quick.
It sure does. It's much more fair when it's in the 99 than it is User Commander.
Yeah, it's very true.
Yeah. Next card we have is Rumor Gatherer. This is a 3 mana, 1 white, 2/1 elf wizard. It has Alliance. Whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, you scry 1. If it's the second time this ability is resolved, you draw a card instead.
Yeah.
So you get to scry 1 for the first trigger and then draw a card.
Yeah, this one's really, really good in any sort of token-based deck.
Yep.
And I think it's just a fantastic another white card that's fantastic for draw a card.
Yep. Doing
what you want to do, getting those extra cards. Next one is definitely a Stephen Green special. Rite of the Raging Storm. It's a 3 red enchantment. Creatures named Lightning Rager can't attack you or planeswalkers you control. And at the beginning of each player's upkeep, that player creates a 5/1 red elemental creature token named Lightning Rager. It has trample haste, and at the beginning of the end step, sacrifice this creature. Chaos everywhere.
This card has never been good for me, and it has only punished me every time I've seen it. So
every time. I love it.
Never fails.
I love it so much.
Next card we have is from the Crimson Vow Commander
decks.
Yeah, Mirage
Phalanx, yeah.
4 colors and a red. It is a creature, human soldier. 4/4. It has soul bond mechanics, so all the way back from the Champions of Kamigawa mechanic. As long as it is paired with another creature, so when it comes into play, soul bonds with another creature, each of those creatures has, at the beginning of combat on your turn, create a creature token that's a copy of this creature, except it has haste and loses soul bond, exile it at the end of combat.
Yeah, so pairing this with something else that's got like an enter the battlefield effect,
yep.
Your Geist Honored Monk or something like that, it's going to be really, really good because it's just going to come in, give you that bonus, and then you get to attack with it, and then goes away. This one was kind of an interesting inclusion. So this was also around when I was thinking I originally added a bunch of cards that had Myriad to the deck, and then realized that with the way that Nayali's worded, it is whenever they attack, and Myriad is obviously comes in tapped and attacking, so it doesn't trigger that. So make sure you don't fall into that trap of trying to put in a bunch of Myriad stuff into that. But things like Mirage Phalanx, which makes the creature at the beginning of combat, and then you can attack with it, help trigger that.
Yep.
So we got a couple cards that we'd suggest removing, and the first one is another one that's kind of like Wormquake, where it's Gold Warden's Gambit. It's similar in nature to me, where I think it could be really cool, but it's also probably not quite where you want to be.
It costs 8 mana, Jeremy.
It does.
8.
It costs 8 mana, but it has affinity for equipment.
I guess.
So it's a sorcery, it has affinity for equipment, and then it says create 5/2/2 red rebel creature tokens. They gain haste until end of turn. For each of those tokens, you may attach an equipment you control to it. So if you have 6 equipment out, it's a red.
Sure.
However, this deck only has 7 pieces of equipment in it total.
I was thinking you're going to have 2 pieces of equipment, and hopefully they're bigger pieces so that you get the bonus for not having to pay to equip.
Yeah.
But man, this card costs a lot of mana. I could see a deck that would abuse it.
Yes,
for sure.
They're definitely, I think this is very good in some of the decks that have come out. I think Wylith was one of them that had a bunch of equipment in it. There have been some red-white decks that really care about equipment, and they really want you to play this card in it specifically, because there's a very good chance this card is just going to end up costing 2 or 3.
Yeah, I can't remember the name of the card off the top of my head. But there's like a 3 mana uncommon commander from Dominaria. And he gets a bonus for every equipment or aura on him.
Sure, yeah.
He gives you a creature.
Yeah.
That deck will end up having a ton of equipment.
Yeah, stuff like that. I think this will be really good in those decks. I don't think that this Precon is quite focused enough on equipments to really be worth it.
Yeah.
Like I said, you can get this down to like 4 or 3 or even 2. Fantastic. Amazing card. If you're paying 8 or 7 or 6 for it, probably not quite where you want to be. Our next one is a piece of equipment.
Yeah, the next card, you Mace of the Valiant. 2 colors and a white. It's an artifact equipment. Crip Creature gets +1/+1 for each charge counter on it and has Vigilance. And whenever a creature enters the battlefield under your control, you put a charge counter on this. So it costs 3 to equip in addition to that.
Yeah.
Like, it's fine. You're going to be making a bunch of tokens, so I get it. It's going to get a bunch of charge counters pretty quickly.
Yeah.
But there's just better things you can do.
It's okay. Yeah.
It's a great card for a Precon.
Yeah.
Here's your equipment. it's a big equipment because hopefully it'll give your creature, +4, +5, +6.
Yeah.
But that's about it.
The next 2 cards.
Yeah, you better do both.
Yeah, I was just going to say.
Both of these are cards I like, Jeremy.
I know.
So
both of these cards I think are okay in the deck, but I think you can definitely improve on them if you're going to upgrade the deck. And that's Hordling Outburst and Battle Screech. Hordling Outburst is a sorcery for 1 red. Create 3 1/1 red goblin creature tokens. Pretty good rate. Battle Screech, I know, was one. As soon as I put this in, I was like, this is going to annoy John so much. This is a card you really like. It's a sorcery for 2 white. Create 2 1/1 white bird creature tokens with flying, and it has flashback. Tap 3 untapped white creatures you control. So both of these, I think, I still think Battle Screech is good. I don't think that it's a bad card. I think that there are better things you could be doing in this deck. You're either going to be playing the cards that come in and give you creatures tokens,
sure,
or you can play the stuff like Raise the Alarm, which is an instant.
Yeah, Raise the Alarm will be a good one.
Stuff like that. So, in addition to that, I knew that was going to annoy you, so I also put a card that I knew that was in the deck that would already annoy you.
One day they'll figure this out. Temple of the False God, just take it out of your decks. Especially multicolor decks. Oh my gosh! Yeah. Every time I draw this card before it's active. And it drives me absolutely nuts. I'm surprised they haven't iterated on this card to make it, not as punishing.
Yeah.
Because it's not like it's a massive boost. Oh, no, I have 6 lands, now I have 7.
Yeah. I think this one's, interesting in a deck like this where it has 38 lands. But for the most part, it's kind of... It's a wishy-washy thing, and I think it's going to be divided. People are going to be divisive about it, no matter what.
Also, take a look at how many pips this deck has.
That's the
it's
big
very
part.
color heavy. Lots of double whites, lots of double
reds.
It's that card. You just can't play that card in this deck.
I think the biggest gain for something like Temple of the False God is it's 1 land that pays for commander tax.
Yeah, that's definitely a bonus.
That's
no question.
That's one of the things. One of the reasons why I think it sees a lot of play in commander.
Sure.
But for the most part, you could take it out of this. It's got 38 lands in it. You're probably going to want to trim down because you are in a red-white attacking focused kind of deck.
Yeah.
So it's probably a good one to take out and replace with something that's a little bit... We generally try and keep the cards that we add in to around $5 or under for this show. And a lot of the times we would suggest actually putting in better land bases, but those can get out of hand pretty quick.
Yep.
You generally want to take out the stuff that's the common comes into play taps for one of the 2 colors kind of cards, and replacing them with something like the Battle Bond lands or Shock lands or something.
Yeah.
But not everybody has those, and they can get kind of expensive.
Yep.
So,
and I think depending on your player, the unique cards that you can add to the deck are better than your mana investment. I think your mana investment comes later.
Yeah.
Unless you're trying to streamline very hard.
Yeah.
You could just you'll be fine.
Yeah, if you're taking one of these precons to really just make it as best you can, you're most likely going to be building around the commander and taking out a lot. But for this, I think if you're just taking a couple things in and out, just take out Temple of the False God. Maybe replace it with another card that gives you both mana so that you have enough for both the multiple pips. So, But let us know what you think in the comments below for both the cards that you would add into the decks, the cards that you would take out. Let us know how you feel about Temple of the False God. So, for Jonathan Suarez, I'm Jeremy Knoll. Thank you so much. Make sure to like, comment, share, subscribe, binge, and we will see you next time.